It's Cageside with John Morgan.
And welcome back. Another edition of Cageside with John Morgan. I'm your host, Eric McMahon. Sorry about last week, but we took it off in observance of Martin Luther King Day. But we'll talk about that UFC event that we did not get to recap. We brought receipts with us. And yes, we did accurately predict. But with that being said, there was a massive, originally Bellator card, morphed into a PFL card, and now we are going to talk about it. But to bring the man in, his name's on the marquee. Follow him on X, John Morgan _MMA. What up, John?
What's going on, man? Yeah, obviously we had the holiday last week, so we didn't get to step in and pat ourselves on the back. Man, I just felt like a lot of people were looking in the wrong direction in that fight, and I felt like we absolutely nailed it. So we had that. We had a busy weekend, you know, even though the UFC was off. I mean, you had, as you said, that amazing card over in Dubai. You had some fun BKFC names that were in action as well. And, man, I did a whole lot of college wrestling, which was fun. I felt like I was like old school minor league baseball or maybe old school wrestling professionally, barnstorming the Midwest as we went back and forth between Columbia, Missouri, and Little Rock. So, yeah, the UFC took a week off, but obviously we stayed busy in the world of combat sports, and there's always something to talk about in this game.
Yeah. Well, what I think is the top billing is the spectacular performance in the PFL from Dubai this past weekend. Usman Nurmagomedov and Paul Hughes. Now, I want to preference all of this with saying I didn't know much about Paul Hughes. Truth be told, I don't think anybody knew a lot about Paul Hughes. What we did know about Paul Hughes is he had 2 Bellator fights, one of which was defeating the highly acclaimed, highly respected AJ McKee, which took everybody and said, holy smokes, which then, you know, the odds were saying he may have been pushed into this title shot maybe a little bit early, but let's capitalize on it. Good job, PFL, right? And so now we had the matchup of Usman Nurmagomedov, who we've always says he may be the best lightweight in the world. We don't know. Only Habib and that small little training group does know. And so he sets up with a fight, Usman and Paul Hughes. And I think everybody was saying a little too much, a little too quick. That wasn't the case. That was an amazing fight. And before we start talking about it, John, this is how close of a fight it really was. Have you seen the punch stats on it?
Oh, no, I haven't seen the punch stats.
Usman Nurmagomedov, 128 strikes landed. Paul Hughes, 120 strikes landed.
Oh, man.
Over the course of 25 minutes.
That's incredible, man. That's unbelievable. I think you laid it out exactly right. Like if you talk to, you know, European-based media and folks that really follow that scene, that, you know, they were bragging about Paul Hughes and saying, man, this dude is the real deal. Pay attention. And I'd seen a couple of his fights and really liked what I saw, but it just felt like a little bit soon. As you said, we're talking about Usman Nurmagomedov as potentially the best 155er on the planet. So it's not any like, hey, Paul Hughes, you're not that good. It's just like, man, are you ready for this yet? And yes, he had the win over AJ McKee, which certainly opened up some eyes, but a split decision. And that is a talented athlete. But, man, I got to be honest with you. I think I wrote Paul Hughes off a little bit too much, man. I was in that camp that didn't give him enough respect coming into this fight. But you know what, man? Those days are over. That man has my respect. But what he did, and again, in a losing effort, it's one of those fights that if you didn't watch the fight and you simply just pull up his Tapology page or read the headline or whatever, you go, oh, yeah, he lost. I kind of thought he would lose. That does not tell the story. This dude is the real deal. Spectacular performance. Surprised the heck out of me. Maybe some controversy. I didn't see it necessarily in the score. I thought Usman did
get there. Don't jump the shark for me, John.
All right, I won't go too far. You know me, I get excited.
You jumped the shark twice in one statement, okay?
You take it where you want to go.
Well, since you already jumped the shark a little bit with, you said like what an impressive showing and he impressed everybody. This was the last thing I wanted to talk about, but let's make it the first, and then we'll go into the fight. Then we'll go into if there was controversy, which I think we both agree there wasn't controversy. But a lot of times we say, and in Bull Durham, they most famously said, sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, sometimes you tie. Think about it. And the way I look at this fight is this loss did no damage to him. Zero, zilch, none. It only skyrocketed the kid. Now, on the flip side of that, this win, did it, in fact, somewhat hurt Usman Nurmagomedov? It doesn't hurt him in, is he a champion? It didn't hurt him in, say, where's his ranking in Bellator PFL or wherever. I could say is this win didn't do anything to elevate him. Would I be correct in thinking that?
I agree.
And maybe unjustly, but just it is.
I agree completely. And not to go too far ahead again, but when you talk about the result of Umar Nurmagomedov, I don't know that we're not necessarily looking at this result in a vacuum as perhaps we should. If you take this away from itself.
Not the game shark another time, John Morgan.
And like I said, I don't want to do that, but you know what I mean? I almost feel like you have to tie these in together, because if that's what we're talking about, if we're talking about reputation, if we're talking about public sentiment, if we're talking about how people look at the whole thing, I think you almost have to put the results together. As unfair as that may be to either individual, we talk about this squad as a team, right? And it seems like when you put these back-to-back weeks together, I think people are. So, yes, to answer your question, and unfortunately to go ahead as well, I don't think this did anything for people to look at Usman Nurmagomedov positively. I think they'll almost look at him negatively, right or wrong.
And I think to the nerds like us,
of course,
I don't look at this negatively.
No.
But we say public sentiment can be like, based off of, when you go back and you look at Umar and this, maybe they're not, like, I can see that argument from the layman, I guess you can say.
It's going to happen. But I love what you're saying, because I should have given that caveat, because I don't have that. What I see is Usman Nurmagomedov, who fought a very tough Paul Hughes, who probably, maybe, and he kind of admitted as much afterwards, kind of felt the same way we did. They didn't necessarily give this Paul Hughes kid enough respect coming into the matchup, but certainly will afterwards.
100%. So I want to get into the fight, and
let's do it.
And the fight was largely contested on the feet, late rounds, a little bit of grappling, which then brings in the controversy. Now, I think it is safe to say that Usman was round one. All judges scored it round one.
Yep.
Round two. I believe all judges scored round two. Round three is where the tide had shifted, right? And I went back and I was watching round three, and it got a lot more competitive. And I think the round three is where the tide started shifting. Now, I still gave, Usman round three. Before we talk about 4 and 5, I want to talk us up to 3. Did you have that same scorecard as me?
So believe it or not, I had a little bit differently. I actually had 1 and 3 for Usman. And again, I had 2 for Paul Hughes, but very, very close. Very, very, very close. And one judge did have it that way. So to your point, actually, I take that back. I take that back. Let me put that the other way. Nobody had it that way. I guess I'm the only one. Oh, no, I am right. I thought I was crazy here for a second. I'm looking at the scorecard now.
Like, Muhammad Ali.
You're right. I had it the same way as him. So thankfully, I was like, wait a minute, I'm crazy. So I had round 2 for Hughes. So I had it that way. And then same thing, I had it for 3 Nurmagomedov, but then, of course, the point deduction.
No.
Yeah, and I want to hear, so it's even at that point for me going in. And the point deduction.
I did not like it. I love.
I was going to ask you about that. See, I was going to ask you about that.
Well,
go into it.
Okay, so round 1, we have equal nut shots.
Right.
Nurmagomedov nut shotted Paul Hughes. Paul Hughes returned the favor. Right? I thought, in my opinion, just based off of the effective striking, that Nurmagomedov won round 2. Right? Let's not even talk about round 2. Now we get to round 3. I think, in my personal opinion, that Nurmagomedov was controlling the fight. He was landing the more effective strikes. But I think the tide started turning before we get to the nut shot. I think the tide started turning is in this tie plum, right? In the plum where he had him, and Hughes is just ripping body shots. I think that took a lot more out of Nurmagomedov than pretty much anything else. I still didn't think it was enough, though, right? Because he was forced into that position. He didn't want to be there. You know, and I look at intent in a lot of things when I'm looking at these fights. But then the nut shot happened. Now, a nut shot happened earlier in that round as well. And it was just another warning, keep him up. I get that. Mike Beltran, he did the right thing. And I'm not necessarily thinking he did the wrong thing when he deducted the point, but let's examine what happened when the point was taken.
That's the key, I think.
It was a scramble-ish, and then Paul Hughes turns his back and does a 360 as the kick is coming. So in reality, in my opinion, Paul Hughes turned into the kick, and Nurmagomedov didn't throw a reckless kick. Because in my opinion, when I'm going to look for when I'm taking a point is, one, you've already done it before. And then 2, was this reckless? Was it a reckless shot where you were not trying to place it? And if the answer to that is yes and yes, 1 point, right? Yep. What this happened is he was throwing, it wasn't an inside kick. He was throwing it with the outside leg, right? While Paul Hughes did the 360 pirouette into it. I personally would not have taken a point there. I don't fault Beltran because now that is the 3rd nut shot. So I think in his opinion, he was like, listen, now this also goes back to why do we deduct points? Because we have to even out the fight. Right. Hey, you were doing something that dramatically affected his ability to fight. I need to take that point to level it out. So from that regard, I see it. But was it reckless? It was not a reckless strike that he threw. So I don't agree with the point necessarily. I'm not going to chastise Beltran, who has had way more damn experience than I do. So I'm not going to, chastise him for it. I just personally wouldn't have taken the point.
No, I'm glad you said that because I actually felt exactly the same way you did. And I'll echo your sentiments about Beltran. I think he is that dude is as good as it gets, man. He is a high quality official. He's doing a great job. He commands the cage maybe better than anybody in the sport. You know what I mean? He's just the absolute 100%. Physical presence. People are going to listen to him. So he's as good as it gets. And I just like the guy personally, man. I mean, he's a good dude. Always enjoy chatting with him at events. But in this one, I do disagree with him. It's almost one of those ones where he felt, again, and I think you nailed it. It's clear why he did it, right? The multitude, right? It wasn't the severity of that one shot. It was the multitude of the shots where he's like, I got to take a point. You know what I mean? I got to do something here because I got to stop this. So from that part, I get it. I just hated it was that instance because of fact it was the spin. It wasn't like, hey man, I'm just going to keep throwing that inside leg kick. And if I hit it, I hit it. It's not my fault. You know what I mean? It was because of Hughes' movement. It's like, to me, that almost absolves Usman of the responsibility. Right. So again, I don't want to put too much on it, but I didn't like it either.
Here's where I'm going to push back just a little bit and push back not only against you, but myself, right? Yeah. And I'm going to play the 100% devil's advocate on this because this was a tough spot for Beltran. It was a tough spot. Now, remember when I said points need to even it out? We need to even it out. If Paul Hughes wouldn't have turned and collapsed to the ground in pain, I think Beltran would have just said, hey, you almost caused that. But since that is what happened, he went face down, holding his nads, being like, I think Beltran, I still don't think I would have done it. But
that's a good point.
He's got a lot more experience. Is that the way that Paul Hughes reacted to the shot heavily, in my opinion, heavily influenced Beltran in taking that point.
That's a good point because you are right. And we've seen that over time. And I think that's the right call, right? Like, let's say that was the first. Well, I wouldn't say that because the way that Hughes was turning. But anytime you see somebody collapse like that, even if it's the first shot of the night, like you have the ability to take a point at that point, right? I mean, you should almost consider taking a point because, as you said, we're trying to even things out. So I get it. And like I said, man, the last thing I want to do is sit here and sound like we're questioning Beltran because that dude is as good as it gets in the official department. But at the time, watching live, I felt the same way where it's kind of like, I don't know about that one. So worth mentioning.
So, but I think we can both say, that Usman won that round. But in my opinion, the tide, the momentum, even though you gave him round 2, I think the momentum was starting to shift in that round, especially from those body shots. Correct?
Agreed. Oh, man, those body shots were nasty, bro. That dude was just ripping to the body. I loved it so much. I absolutely 100% agree.
Now let's go into round 4, the championship rounds. Like, where boys become men. You know what I mean? And
we've come to the. That was my boys, the men there.
Oh, there we go. Okay. I was like, I've heard that song forever. Paul Hughes was. I went back and watched round 4 today because that's where I think a lot of the people are talking about the controversy in the scoring. And so in preparation for this, I went back and watched round 4 and only round 4. I didn't give myself any precursor of watching 1, 2, and 3 or 5. I wanted to watch round 4 as it was a brand new fight.
Let's hear it.
I'm going to say this. I think exactly what happened with Islam Makhachev and Alexander Volkanovski in one of perception versus reality. Okay? So perception is, hey, listen, when you get a takedown, like these guys are supposed to take him down. He shouldn't be getting up. He shouldn't be hitting switches. He shouldn't be doing any of this. I went and watched it, right? And Paul Hughes was winning. He was winning. And I think the perception that once Usman really got him down, like it was too little too late. I disagree that he should have been able to get him down earlier. He should have done this. But in reality, Paul Hughes was winning. I gave Usman the round because I went back and watched it. Now, I think if that headbutt had not happened in that 2.5, 3 minutes of recovery time would not have happened, this fight could have been a win for Paul Hughes. I think the momentum was clearly on that side. I really think that Nurmagomedov was tired. He was hurt. He was compromised in some way, shape, or form. That headbutt hit. He goes down. Both of them actually get hurt by it.
Yeah.
Beltran, but obviously Nurmagomedov had a little bit more damage, not blood-wise, but damage to his head. And it took him longer to recover. What was the first exchange after that? Do you recall?
I don't.
Paul Hughes throws a kick. Nurmagomedov catches it for the takedown, ends the last minute and a half on top, throwing pretty decent elbow strikes. To me, that won him the round because prior to that, it was Paul Hughes and Nurmagomedov, basically, in my opinion, going 1 for 1 in punches. But Nurmagomedov was going backwards, and the punches were a little bit harder and a little bit crisper for Paul Hughes. So I had him slightly ahead in the round to that point. Then he catches the kick, dumps him, stays on top, and not heavy damage, but in my opinion, had enough damage to win him the fight.
Yeah, that's interesting. I forgot that was the first exchange after the round. Yeah. And I forgot that was the first exchange after the restart. You're so right. And that, to me, that's the same way I felt about the round, though, as well. I will say, what a visual for Paul Hughes, right? I mean, come on. You know what I mean? If we're talking about just outside of just the fighting itself, I mean, you need those kind of marketable moments or whatever, right? Like that clip of him doing exactly that, wiping the blood. I mean, that's going to be on highlight reels of Paul Hughes for years to come.
That's where I'm talking about perception might not be reality.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I will give the caveat that I was watching this on a phone, so my screen and my viewing experience wasn't the best. I was making the drive from Little Rock back to Columbia, Missouri for CFSC match on Sunday. So I was watching on phone, so I was a little bit worried that maybe my scoring was off from yours, and that may lead to why I scored round 2 a little bit different. But I actually feel exactly the same way you did about round 4. I think that was the turning time. And it made me wonder as well, and I don't know if it was a Nurmagomedov plan going in or what. I just thought he should have utilized the grappling a lot more early on in the fight. And I think it maybe would have, not made this as close of a fight as it was, because that's where the differentiator was. And I know that Usman is not Khabib. You know what I mean? I know that his game is not based solely on the grappling aspect of it. He's a very kick-heavy striker, very refined, very polished. We always praise what he brings to the table. But against this dude, against this rib-roasting, heavy-handed Irishman that was just, wailing on you, I would have liked to see him kind of not try to engage in the striking department so early and so often, because I think that's where the differentiator was for Usman, and I wish he would have gone there. So I was with you on round 4.
Okay. But I do want to go back to 1 and 2 in the striking, because in round 1 and 2, I just thought the speed advantage and the crispness, the crispness of the strikes, the leg shots, the going down, going low, going high. I just think Usman won round 1 and 2 on the striking. I think he was more active, albeit moving backwards more often. And I think he was just more effective. Now, I think in round 2, again, perception, because Usman tried a few takedowns and was not able to get it.
Yeah.
That's still 50-50. It's not advantage Paul Hughes, right? So that would be basically saying, if you were to throw a punch and I parry it, that I won the striking exchange. Like, I just don't buy that, right? And that's why I honestly think perception, because, this guy has his cousin is Khabib. He's got a last name Nurmagomedov. He should be doing this. And since he can't at will, he's not winning like he should.
It's such a funny thing, but it's so, and I think about this all the time. Like, the officials, should they know who they're judging or should they not? Like, on the one hand, you would be like, I want you to be as educated as possible. I want to make sure that you know every fighter so that you're familiar with their game. You're familiar. But I do think you're right about that. And again, I'm not talking about these judges in particular. I'm just talking about overall, because I think you're 100% right about that. And maybe we're not even just talking about judging. Maybe we're talking about analysts. Maybe we're talking about viewers, whatever. It's like, because you know these athletes and you know what they are good at or what you expect their game plan to be, if they're not able to implement it, I think you're 100% right about that. Sometimes it really impacts the way we look at things, because we think, he was not able to do this. Okay, fine. But if he wasn't doing that and he was doing something else, that also counts. You know what I mean? So I totally get where you're coming from with that. And it's something that I've thought about multiple times over the years in fights. Is like, man, are we looking into what we think should have happened versus actually looking at what happened? And I do think that's a problem sometimes.
Yeah. And I think from a lot of fan perception that are calling that this, and I think Paul Hughes, to a degree, said the scorecards were crazy. They were a little all over the board. They weren't crazy though, right?
They were close rounds. They were close rounds, man. And I think that's lost.
128 to 120 over the course of the fight.
I think that's lost on people sometimes as well. Like, and I know you and I have mentioned it before, because obviously, like you said, man, we're deep into this game. But like, you can have a 50-45 fight that's razor thin. You know what I mean? Like, every single round could be determined by one punch, and it ends up being 50-45. That doesn't mean it was a one-sided fight. It just means,
you know what my scorecard read?
What was it?
49-45. I had Usman winning every round.
Yeah, that's I was thinking about that as we were going through this. I mean, the only reason you don't have him at 50 is because of the point deduction, which is obviously there. So, but I get it. It's close, and again, very, very close rounds. And as we said going into this, I'm not going to miss a Paul Hughes fight moving forward anymore. You know what I mean? Like, this dude is the man. This dude proved himself, and it's one of those fights where, even though he didn't get the result, and man, you could see the look on his face, man, just how disappointed and heartbroken and upset he was. And I get that, but I'm telling you, man, there's not a single person that watched that event on Saturday that walked away with less respect for Paul Hughes than they did going into it, man. That dude made his name for the PFL.
You know who Paul Hughes is now? Your favorite fighter's favorite fighter.
100%. That dude went out there and threw down, man. And
here's what I will say about me watching it. It's hard from a fan to see how strong those punches hit if there's not a lot of like reaction.
Right.
So that could be the difference in some of the judges of me scoring it every round for for Nurmagomedov because Paul Hughes was countering very effectively. And a lot of times on the broadcast, you know, you would hear Hardy saying, "Oh, and he got him with a good check hook." But it didn't read like it was really, really hard, but it may have been live. So that's why I just didn't know. And I kept on just the way I judge fights. I'm going to give you guys a little spoiler. When I'm really judging a fight, I'll take a pen, right? Let's just say right here, and I'll put it right in the middle of the screen. Right? I do this when I'm officially judging at events too. And I'm always teetering it throughout the whole fight. I keep one hand on the pen and I'm watching and I always teeter it.
That's interesting.
Wherever it ends at the end of the fight, that's who won the round.
So you physically actually do that?
Every time I do that, I physically teeter my pen to one side. So like a jab, minor jab is a minor click. A big overhand is almost like 2.
I like that. To be honest, man, I 100% like that. I honestly feel like when I used to work for MMA Junkie, I did a lot of the play-by-play. You know, if you ever looked at MMA Junkie back in the day, they'd have the big live blog basically where if you were at work or couldn't buy the pay-per-view or whatever, you could read round by round what was going on. And I honestly think that made me so good at judging because I'm literally writing out all the action that's happening, right? As it's happening. It's forcing me to acknowledge each offensive strategy rather than just, if you just sit there and you kind of passively try to soak in 5 minutes, I think it's almost impossible at the end of that 5 minutes to say who won. I've often advocated, like, I almost wish that there was like a little piece of paper that the judges had to use, right? Because at the end of the day, all they do is just turn in their score, right? The guy comes around, collects the sheets, 10-9, who'd you have? I almost would like a little like, and again, you don't want to distract yourself. You don't want to be, looking down writing, but at least just, something that you could do. I like what you're saying with moving it back with just a little tick mark red, a little tick mark blue, whatever of like, that was a solid striking exchange or that was a solid grappling exchange or whatever that you can kind of look down and reference at the end. Like, I think it's 10-9, but you're like, wait a minute. I got a whole bunch of tick marks over here on the blue side. Why'd I go red? So it's
and it almost gives me a better recall, right? Jab, overhand, jab, right? And then a lot of times when I get questioned about it, well, why did you give this? I'm like, well, he had three more powerful. I'm gonna count 2, stinging overhand rights, more than 3 jabs. That's why, and it makes my recall better, but it makes me decisive in the moment.
Yeah,
who won the round.
I love that because like sometimes you'll hear arguments from fans or whatever about, hey, man, I think we should judge fights as a whole. And I'm so adamantly against judging fights as a whole because like I just don't think the human brain, I mean, there's going to be exceptions out there, but the average human brain, I don't think can recall 15 minutes, much less 25 minutes of action in a mixed martial arts contest and weigh them all equally and against each other. So I love your methodology. I think it's just great to hear that you have a methodology because I think I honestly believe to just sit there passively for 5 minutes and to be able to process everything that you watch and give a winner at that is insanely hard.
And that's why I feel confident in the way that I scored it because like even that round 4 that I went back and watched.
Yep.
That was the controversy. I did that at my desk this morning. I put my pen down and I judged the fight, right? So the takedown got him almost back to even, in my opinion, not quite to even, but the takedown off the kick, got him back, fairly close. And Paul Hughes just doing kind of smacking at his head does nothing for me.
Yep.
And then big elbow. Big elbow, big elbow, big elbow. He had like 3 or 4 succession, 3 big elbows in the last 20 seconds of that round, which solidified it to me. Gave him a razor thin margin, but I had my method and I can recall that by my exercise in which I did to judge that round.
I love it, man. Like I said, you gave him all 5 rounds. I only gave him 1 round. I only gave him round 2. So to me, I didn't think it was controversial. At the end of the fight, regardless of seeing a round-by-round breakdown, I felt pretty comfortable in who had won the fight. So I didn't see any controversy in it. I will say, I've seen some speculation. What do you do next? I sure wouldn't hate a rematch.
Rematch.
Yep.
Hey, PFL, put me on payroll. If you don't do a rematch, you drop the bag, right? You dropped it. And guess what? Do not do this as a pay-per-view.
No, absolutely not.
Do it as Don't put it part of your super fight series or this, that, and the other. You get this going on ESPN Plus. You market the hell out of this. And guess what? It could be your biggest event to date. I promise you that.
I 100% completely agree with you. I hope that, there is sanity over in that office. They had a big fight that, let's be honest, I think flew largely under the radar. You know what I mean? Obviously, it was over in Dubai. It was happening in the morning. It was happening on a weekend where NFL was taking sitters. I mean, there's a whole lot of reasons why it kind of went under the radar, including that a lot of people, I think, probably didn't give Paul Hughes the respect that he deserved. But it was a phenomenal fight. I would say one of the greatest fights in PFL history, if I'm being honest with you. Insanely competitive, very good. Hinted with a little bit of controversy, perhaps. You and I don't believe it, but hey, if people are talking about it, that's all that matters. They're talking about it. So as a promoter, I am 100% with you. You got to rebook this fight. You got to do it again. Don't put them in any brackets. Don't put them in any playoff tournaments. Anything that you're trying to do, just set it up. Do the rematch, make it a headliner, as you said, put it on ESPN Plus, give it all the love. You got all the footage you need. You got all the respect that you need. I mean, you got everything that you need in there. Run this one back.
100%. And you want to talk about how under the radar it flew? And I'm a diehard.
Right.
And this is how under the radar it flew. I woke up that morning. What time does the card start? 11 a.m. Central. Got it. Okay, I'm out and about doing my day. I had to go to one of my gyms, did some things, took the family to lunch, and then I took my 3-year-old upstairs, put her into bed, gonna have her take a nap at around 1:30. And I kind of always just sit down with my kids, is just get them to relax when they're about ready to take a nap. Once they're relaxed, then I'll get up and leave the room. Okay, go to sleep, sweetheart. So I sit down in my chair in her room, and I just kind of grab my phone, and it's Aaron Brons, whatever his name is.
Aaron Bronstetter, yep.
Bronstetter. So like, and now, Usman gets set to make his walk to the cage. And I was like, oh, shit. And I put it on, right? That's how under the radar this monster fight for them went. Now, they sold out an 11,000 seat arena, so they did pretty good. I bet you internationally it crushed it. But here where it needed to get to boost PFL's stock. It was on at the main event, 1:30 Central or 1:30 p.m. Central. That's a tough time to draw fans.
It really is. And I'm glad you said that sold out arena. That crowd was electric, man. They deserve some credit for the energy that they brought to the table. But you're right, man. It's a struggle for the PFL right now, right? I mean, what they're doing best is capturing the international audience and in the international market, man. I honestly think that's what PFL is doing better than anybody else, because they're delivering things in prime time. This PFL Europe, you got PFL Africa, you got PFL Middle East. They're delivering these things in those local markets, which I think is great. But that does make it more of a challenge to capture the U.S. audience. This was a great fight. It delivered for him. I think you got to bring this over to the United States, and you got to run it back next year. I would say one other performance I want to highlight on the card too, Vadim Nemkov. Vadim Nemkov, if you haven't been watching his career, you might want to get to know the name because, listen, I know there's a lot of fans that basically only watch the UFC. That's just the reality of it. I get it. Not everybody's as hardcore as me and you that are just into everything. A lot of people only watch UFC. Vadim Nemkov might very well be heading to the UFC very soon. It was the final fight of his contract, and that dude is good. And I was watching Vadim Nemkov, defeat Tim Johnson. Great dude, Tim Johnson. Was kind of overmatched in this one. And I was thinking to myself, how damn good Vadim Nemkov versus Tom Aspinall would be, man. Those dudes with their speed and their athleticism at heavyweight, I would love to see that fight. Now, we need to get to Tom Aspinall and John Jones, and we got all that business to handle. So I'm not saying we got to do that next, but I'm saying if Vadim Nemkov comes to the UFC, which I believe he might, that's a fight that I got to see at some point. These dudes are just fast and athletic at heavyweight.
You know what I thought about when that fight was happening?
What's that?
Tim Johnson doesn't do anything but fight the baddest mother effers in the world. That guy, I don't think he's had an easy fight in 10 years. Like, I don't think he's had a fight where it's like, oh yeah, like this one isn't, this guy potentially couldn't murder me. That guy, like, only fights, like, I guess his draws in his tournaments that he's had and stuff. It's just like, dude, this guy goes through the gauntlet, man.
He does, man. That dude is just a blue collar, scrappy, like, let's just get in there and throw down, like, whatever. Let's just throw down every time. I love that guy. Again, athletically, he was overmatched in this one, but that dude has never been afraid of a tough fight, for sure.
No, he has not. But hey, So we talked a lot about Usman Nurmagomedov. Looked great. Paul Hughes looked spectacular. No controversy. You gave Paul Hughes a round. I gave him no rounds. Point deduction. I see the logic. The logic is 100%.
It's there.
The logic is 100%. I just don't know if I would have made that call, but I wasn't there. I didn't see how compromised Paul Hughes was in the moment either, which may have had to equal it out. So Beltran, you're still the man with me. See the politics I'm just doing right now?
Just making sure, because I know I'm going to have to see you real soon. So I just want to make sure.
Yeah.
We're good, baby. We're good.
But now let's take a look back at Usman's cousin, Umar Nurmagomedov, and Merab Dvalishvili. Now, let's not be revisionist history here. He was a plus, or he was, Nurmagomedov was what, minus 280, I think it was?
Yeah.
280 favorite. 280 favorite. And we both said, Vegas, do you know what you're doing here? And we said, this gets out of round 2, and Nurmagomedov can't keep him down, take him down, or hold him down, or keep him down. Merab is going to weaponize that cardio, and that is exactly what he wanted, what he did. And if you don't believe us, go back to our last episode. We said it verbatim, both me and John. Receipts have been given.
Listen, man. You're really good at breaking down fights, man. I've enjoyed so much over the years doing this podcast with you and listening to your analysis, because I think you're very, very savvy in the way you break down fights. But this one, to me, you and I were spot on the same page, and I was just shocked that I felt like in a lot of ways we were out on an island. Now, I'm not saying we were the only ones. I saw some other people out there, that were kind of saying the similar thing. But I just felt everybody was like, yeah, Merab's, he's got cardio and he's got grappling, but this is Umar. It's different. And it's just not. I think Merab is the one that's different. And I don't want to take away from Umar Nurmagomedov. That dude is good. This fight, we said it was good. I mean, we talked about it before Merab and Sean O'Malley that, like, bro, if Merab can get by Sean, Merab and Umar is going to be amazing. And it was, man. This is everything that you could want in a mixed martial arts fight. It was phenomenal, and I think Umar will be champion at some point in his career. But I just felt like Merab was getting a lot of disrespect, and he went out there and did, I think, exactly what you and I thought he was going to do. And it was, man, it was fun to watch. It was amazing. Merab Dvalishvili is special. I do not believe there's anybody else on the UFC roster that has the type of cardio and pace that he has. In any weight class, in any division, anywhere, I think he is one of one. It's amazing, and it's hard to deal with, both physically and mentally. It's hard to deal with if you're his opponent, because the dude is just not going to stop. And not only do I think it's difficult to deal with as an opponent, but I think it just allows Merab to fight so freely, right? To know that whatever he does, he can do at full speed, at full pace, at full strength, and not have any concerns of like, well, I better hold back a little bit because I don't know how I'm going to feel in 3. I don't know how I'm going to feel in 4. I don't know how I'm going to feel in 5. That thought never has to cross his mind, and it's incredible to watch.
And he can, it was funny because Khabib comes out and he says that he thinks that his brother won, right? And in real time, I didn't think that Nurmagomedov was winning, especially 4 and 5. But I was being a devil's advocate to a group of people. Now, we were watching this after we held the first ever Tennessee Martial Arts Hall of Fame, and I got to watch this fight with Mike Quicksand Pyle.
Wow, Mike Pyle's out there. That's awesome, man. That's a legend of the game.
Yeah. So me and Mike Pyle were sitting down, and we were watching it, and he's like, nah. And I'm like, just hear me out. I said, just hear me out. I got the classifications, and they're like striking, grappling, and octagon control. And I'm like, historically, right? This fight, honestly, I think the fan perception was like Merab ran away with it. And he did cardio-wise. And he did inflicting of what he wanted to do late. But I think if we really look at it, like, he didn't run away with it. I think, Nurmagomedov was still doing a great job effectively striking. And what would this fight have looked like had he not broke his hand in round number 1? Because let's go back. In round number 1, Usman Nurmagomedov was piecing up Merab Dvalishvili. He was piecing him up. Now, I think I looked at that and I said, that pace is too high, too quick. I remember thinking that. And I remember saying that to Mike Powell. I said, this is too high, too quick pace for him. And, and later in the round, because what Merab was doing a lot of times is he was getting the takedown. Nurmagomedov would just like get right back up, and the takedown would be 90% there. And then, Nurmagomedov would dig an underhook and get right back up and not get it all the way down. And it wouldn't really classify as a takedown, although we all knew he really took him down, type situations. And then he would get up and throw a couple jabs and this, that, and the other. And Merab was just walking through it. So I'm almost looking at this as like, if we're really piecing this together, this is a lot closer than Merab showboating and really doing what he wanted. Yeah, was he doing what he wanted? Yes. But he was getting hit a lot doing what he wanted. So when Khabib comes out and says this, I'm like, I don't think he's that far out of left field. I do think they lost, though.
No, it's so funny you say that, because as I was watching this thing live, and look, I'll admit it, man. I mean, I've just been a Merab Dvalishvili fan from day one. Like, I just think he had some of the weirdest start to his UFC career. Like, I think he took some losses that he shouldn't have taken, and people were kind of writing him off. And he's just a good dude.
His first 3 in the UFC.
Yes, and it was like what felt like a robbery and a decision. It was that controversial guillotine choke submission at the finish. Remember that? I mean, it was wild, right? So I've just always been a Merab fan. And I feel like he hasn't gotten his due for how good he is. And so I kind of thought he was going to win. We talked about it. Look, I was like, I think he's going to win this fight. I think the odds are insane. But I will say this. As he's starting to showboat in the 4th and 5th round, as entertaining as it was, I was like, bro, these rounds are a little bit closer than you think right now. You know what I mean? Like, maybe you might not want to showboat. Maybe you want to be a little bit more interested in racking up some offense and securing these rounds, because even in the rounds that he was clearly ahead, even with Umar, we didn't realize at the time, suffering a broken hand, you could see is the fatigue on his face, which is going to happen to anybody that faces Merab Dvalishvili. You can see that. But the rounds were a little bit closer than I think Merab would lead you to believe. I mean, a takedown in which you just drop the guy to his back and then you stand up and walk away is demoralizing, and it is funny to watch. But it's not any points, according to the judges, right? That's just a change in position, and you didn't establish position to do anything with it. So just things like that concerned me a little bit. It was a closer fight. You're right. That I think people maybe are looking at in retrospect. Again, I thought Merab was going to win it going in. I thought he won as it was over. I had no question in my mind. But if you're taking this moment to write off Umar Nurmagomedov and suggest that he was some type of fraud, or that he was not as good as we thought he was, I would counter with that and say no, he absolutely is, and I think he's still going to be champion someday.
Because I think if you look at it from the scoring criteria, I think everybody who's watched the UFC for years who might not dive really into scoring criteria, they still just remember like this is judged on a 10-point must system by effective striking, grappling, and octagon control, right? Yeah. And so they're just like, bam, dude, you get the takedown, you win. Kind of like you win the round, you get this, that, and the other. But I was going by and actually with my file. I'm like, dude, it's on the 3 Ds now, dog.
That's right.
Damage, dominance, and duration. Right?
We heard Mike Goldberg say it for so long that it's just etched, it's seared into our brain. That's what it is. And like, don't forget, it has revised since then.
Right. And so like he had no duration. There wasn't really any damage.
Right.
But in my opinion, he had the duration of he was the aggressor. Nurmagomedov was on his back foot, albeit I thought landing a little bit more of the cleaner strikes.
No, and that's why I think
the duration outweighed it in every round, because really those takedowns don't count. Dvalishvili wanted to take him down. He got him 90% of the way, but then Nurmagomedov stopped it in the last 10%. But fan perception is like, he got him down. He's completely dominating him. I'm like, not really.
No, like I said, no controversy whatsoever, no question. But I just think it's worth realizing that it was closer than I think a lot of people want to believe it was. I mean, Umar was not that far off. And again, this is coming from somebody that is, I'll be honest, essentially Merab Dvalishvilli Homer. You know what I mean? I was still a little bit like, whoo, these are closer than you're letting on. So great performance though, man. I was honored to be there. Boy, what they've done out in Inglewood, man, it's amazing. That Intuit Dome, that arena is incredible, and it's right next to SoFi Center, and it's right next to Cosm, which I finally got to see in person as well. That live event venue. I mean, very cool to do that. That Intuit Dome, though, man, that is the future of arenas, man. It is spectacular what they've done with that building.
Now I got to give your boy Moicano some love here.
Yeah,
bad loss, quick loss. He seemed like he was very upset by it. But you know when a man is a man, it's like he's a damn man's man. Because Joe Rogan said, you took this on 1 day's notice and this, that, and the other. And he goes, Joe, I took this on a lifetime's notice. I've been working for this my entire life. And I was just like, that's a man's man. Like, F yeah, dude, Moicano. That's awesome.
I'm so glad you brought that up. Obviously, I didn't know that's what you're going to refer to, but as soon as you mentioned it, that is exactly what I took away from it as well, dude. And that is amazing because it's so easy to just be like, you know, oh man, you did what you could do on a day's notice. Obviously, it was a crazy week, and it's really easy to be like, yeah, man, if I'd have just had a full training camp, man, or if I'd have been able to really had a chance to game plan, I think this would have gone differently. I did what I could do, but you know, hopefully in the future we can run it back. And you'd be justified in saying all that. But to say what Moicano said, I don't know how you can't respect that, man. That is the honest to God truth. And it almost hurt me to hear him say that. You know what I mean? It hurt me to hear him say that. But that is the reality of it, is that, like, if you are a martial artist and you were doing this for your entire life, that is what you were preparing for. You can't say I didn't have enough notice. That's what you've done. So I'm with you 100%. Obviously, I already liked Moicano as a man anyway. You know what I mean? I already had all the respect in the world from him. I like the guy. But, man, it just even went up more levels. And I'm so glad that you highlighted that. We didn't get to talk about it last week, but I am, because, listen, man, you and I, we love the sport and we love the fights, but we love the people. And we love, because we understand what it takes. You know what I mean? What it takes to be at a high level in the sport. And for him to stand there and say that, I just, my heart went out for him. But as you said, that's a man right there, owning up to it. You know, just saying the way that it is. And, man, I just don't know how you don't respect Moicano for standing in there and saying that.
Yeah, it was awesome. You know, yeah, I mean, that's all we can say about it other than Islam is damn good. And, yeah, I just remember seeing Islam at the PFL and thinking, like, I think he is way bigger than these two guys in here at 155.
Oh, dude, Islam is massive, bro. That dude is huge. And, man, he's so good, man. He really is unbelievable. All right. I got to say two things. And I don't know what else you want to talk about, but I want to mention two things. Number one, BKFC, they had a huge event over the weekend. And obviously, Jeremy Stevens looked incredible. I didn't necessarily love Conor McGregor coming in there and saying, let's set a date, because that's not going to happen. So I found that weird. Like, why are we talking about fights that are never going to happen? And again,
and he's trying to steal Jeremy Stevens' moment.
Yeah, I didn't like it, to be honest with you, man. Let Jeremy Stevens have his moment. And to be honest, I will say, as it unfolded, Jeremy Stevens is talking on the microphone after beating Eddie Alvarez, a legend of the sport, and you could see Conor McGregor in the background. And I will admit, I was sitting there watching it with the CFFC crew. We were all hanging out in Columbia, Missouri, watching it. And I did say to them all, I'm like, Jeremy Stevens right now should look over to Conor McGregor and say, do you know who I am now? You know what I'm saying? Like, echo back that press conference. I would have liked that. But they're never going to fight, right? The UFC would have to sign off on it. They're never going to fight. So I didn't like that. I did like Ben Rothwell. That dude, a 25-year veteran of the sport, is scary as – oh, my – it was so – we were kind of laughing about it, the way he was – I mean, he was literally like just leaning to the right, like cocking that hand, and the one-hitter quitter, man, nasty. But I was super happy for Ben Rothwell. If you've ever met Ben Rothwell, been around Ben Rothwell, talked to Ben Rothwell, you will not find a more – humble, sincere, cool dude that, again, has been doing this at a high level, at the highest level, for over 2 decades. The dude is the man. So I was super happy for him. So big BKFC event. I want to go on a quick college wrestling tangent, if I could. You're a big NCAA wrestling fan, and I'm a newcomer to the game, so I hesitate to have too many opinions. I hesitate to put my emotions and feelings out there too much, because I'll be honest, as much as I love calling it, I still feel like I'm a neophyte in the game. I'm not seasoned. I'm just, I've seen college wrestling in application in mixed martial arts for years and years and years and years and years, but I haven't been around the sport itself. But this past weekend, match week, 3 events in 5 days. It was incredible. Got to see the Missouri Tigers win twice, which is amazing. Got to see that upstart program in Little Rock, which was super cool. A program that wasn't even around 6 years ago, and now they've got All-Americans, and they've got an amazing facility. Super cool. A lot of fun stuff. But yesterday in Missouri, I saw a referee take a point from the West Virginia Mountaineers because their wrestler at 141 pounds, after he lost, tossed his headgear back to the center of the mat. That's got to stop. Taking a point from the team, it wasn't thrown like slamming. Like, if you take your headgear and you slam it at your opponent or you slam it at the opposing team's bench, okay. At that point, like, take a point. But I know we're trying to get this sport to grow, and I think people want to see those emotions. They want to see the energy, and simply taking your headgear off and overhand tossing it back to the center because you're essentially out of bounds when the match ends, I don't think should result in a point being taken away from your team. We talked about it a little bit on the broadcast on UFC Fight Pass. If you didn't see it, go back and watch it for yourself. Again, I hesitate to just put out too strong opinions. And look, I saw a lot of people debating this online. There are a lot of old school people that were like, no, keep your headgear on, go set it down in the center. That's what you're told to do. That's the way it's supposed to be. You throw it, you lose a point. And I get that.
The headgear or strap?
The headgear. He took his headgear off and threw it back to, and yeah. So I don't know, man. I thought it was a bit excessive to take a point away from the team. I didn't think it was necessary. And I understand it may be the letter of the law and it may be the rules and all that. But I thought it was a bit much. And I just think, again, if it's taunting your opponent or it's slamming it at the bench, it's potentially causing danger to somebody. Like, I get all that. I get all those reasons. And I know he was frustrated at the time when he did it, but it wasn't like, it didn't endanger anybody. It wasn't done in a taunting fashion. And it just felt unnecessary. Like, I didn't even see the Missouri bench like pop up and be like, hey, what was that? You know what I mean? It was just complete. And again, I'm not trying to pile on officials. I mean, here we talk about what a thankless job it is. I mean, here you are, you've been a referee at the highest level of the game in the UFC. You get it. It's a thankless job. Like, nobody ever says, hey, that referee was amazing. It's either nobody knows your name and nobody notices you're there, or you suck and you know what I mean?
Everybody knows your name and face.
Yeah, exactly. But I don't want to make it like I'm necessarily all like throwing down on the official, because that is the rule and he's doing what he's supposed to do. But I didn't like it at all, man. I thought it was, and again, we're trying to grow the sport of college. It's an amazing sport. I'm so glad I've been a part of the CFFC Matchday crew, and they've done some amazing duels on UFC Fight Pass. It's cool to see. But that one I thought was a bit much. I just don't think that should happen. You know, if you want to give them a warning, if you want to go over there and tell them.
No, I love what you're saying from a passionate standpoint. I love what you're saying. Can I give you the alternate?
Yeah, because I know there is one, so I want to hear it, because it sounds like you're going to go the old school route.
So there's two things. There's one from a purist. Like, I'm not going to say I was the greatest wrestler in the world. I'm not going to say I know the sport ins and out. I love wrestling. I love college wrestling. I love watching it. I watched Oklahoma State. I watched every single match on ESPN2 or ESPN News, one of the damn ones this past weekend, Oklahoma State and Iowa State. Awesome.
Great.
From the pure standpoint of it, the one thing that I love, the biggest thing that I love most about college wrestling is when you win, you win, and when you lose, you lose. There's no hugging after the match. There's no nothing. They may shake each other's hand, maybe. Usually the guy just gets there and he walks off. They raise the hand and the guy walks off. It's no hug it, talk it out. You did a great job, and this kumbaya moment. I freaking love that about wrestling. You win as a man and you lose as a man. I love that. Okay. So I might push back a little bit on that. I didn't see it, so I don't know. I'll go back and watch. But from the standpoint of winning and losing, you win like a man, you lose like a man. You don't show that emotion. You'll see it in the national championship. The loser never gets a shout out. Like in a UFC fight, the winner gets his hand raised and the loser has to sit there and it's all of one hot second. Boom, and he's off. He walks off, and he walks off the mat like a man. That's what I love about wrestling. That's what I kind of dislike about basketball, football, and all these other things. It's all about like, oh, but this other guy did so good. Like, give it up for him, right?
No, and I like what you're saying, and I want you to watch it when you get a chance. I know you're a busy man; you got a lot going on.
Yeah.
At work and at home.
I'm going to give you from the referee standpoint pushback now.
Yep.
And ironically, after our game on Saturday night, I do this periodically. I'll go into the NBA refs locker room. I've been working in the NBA for 20 years, so I know these guys now. And I'll just sit down and I'll BS with them. And I was kind of BSing with them about an incident that happened to me not too long ago. And, they know that I'm an official. And I was talking to this one ref, and I'm like, and I should have done this. I could have been justified in doing this, but then I get bashed saying I made the wrong call when I didn't. I could have been even more heavy-handed. And I'll tell you what the referee said to me. He goes, Eric, because he's a lead official, like one of the highest lead officials in the NBA. And he goes, when you start doing maybe a little bit favors for somebody to give them the benefit of the doubt, it will always come back to burn you. The rule is the rule. You can never give that benefit of the doubt, because then it will come some way, shape, or form. It will come back to burn you as an official.
I like that. That's sage advice. And I mean, obviously, man, we talk about the highest level of MMA, and you've been there, but man, I mean, there's more eyeballs on the NBA and the NFL. And I mean, that's the highest level of sports officiating. It's tough. You got to have a thick skin. So I love the fact that essentially you got to have a code that you work by and you stick with it. But sometimes I just feel like there's the spirit of the rule as well. And I don't know, man. I felt like that way about, and I probably feel that way about things in life in general, right? Hey, man, you violated this rule. But it's like, yeah, but you understand why or what I was thinking or what. Oh, okay, there we go. I can edit that out, pick that up. Yeah. It cut out. I don't know if it cut out for you, but it cut out for me.
Yeah, well, you cut out on me.
Okay, I actually lost both, so I'll edit that. But anyway. But I guess I've always been that way, like about almost everything in life. Like I understand, like if a rule is a rule, and maybe that's me. Maybe I'm a Johnny Gray area over here. I like to wait and push the boundaries and push the envelope. But I just feel like sometimes, yes, you know the rule, but what's the spirit or the application or what happened in here? You know what I mean? So I don't know. I feel like as much. I look forward to it because you're more of a hardcore wrestling guy than I am. I've gotten to really enjoy this, man. Again, this past week was fun, man. Like I said, we were old school barnstorming, man. We flew into Columbia, then we drove down to Little Rock, back to Columbia, had a couple of great duels. We got 2 more coming. And ironically, the 2 teams you mentioned are on our slate in February. We've got Oklahoma State and we've got Iowa State as well. So I'm looking forward to that. It'll be Oklahoma State and Little Rock, and then Missouri and Iowa State. So 2 great duels still coming up.
Are you going to be in Little Rock or are you going to be in Stillwater?
Little Rock. Yeah.
Well, I need that date. I'll come down. It's a 2-hour drive from me.
Beautiful. All right, and it's like a Saturday afternoon show too, so you could even make it back that night. It's the day before the Super Bowl actually, so you'll be able to make it back. So that'd be a great one. Love to have you out there, man. But yeah, I don't know. Like I said, again, I don't want to harp on the official because you're right. The official is just doing what he's supposed to do. But I don't know. I just felt like there's a little bit of room for interpretation of like, come on, man. Like it wasn't done in any terrible fashion. And listen, this duel came down to the final match. Now, fortunately, it was tied going into the final match. And obviously, if anybody that doesn't watch college wrestling, a win either way is going to be 3 points if you get a decision. So if it's tied, it doesn't matter. The winner's going to win because it'll get at least 3 points, if not up to 6. So it wouldn't have mattered. But, man, as this thing got closer and closer and closer, to think that a team point was taken away because of that, I don't know. It was a little bit frustrating. We want to see emotion, whether it be – and I get what you're saying because I do love the fact that you win as a man, you lose as a man. But I want to see some emotion. I want to see some energy one way or the other. Not crybaby or not taunting, on the highs and the lows. But I want to see a little bit of emotion and let these athletes celebrate what they're doing because, dude, I don't know if there's a harder sport out there than college wrestling, man. I don't know if there is.
There is not. It's not subjective. Guess what? You know what? Maybe one of the only I think there's 2 that we can equate to at probably as tough. One, gymnastics. That is crazy. And truth, yep. I truth to be told, I think swimming is the grind that swimmers go through. Football and basketball are not anywhere close.
No, because you have
nowhere close.
And that's not disrespecting. What those athletes do is incredible. Like in football, like the collisions you take are insane. I mean, the size and the speed of these dudes that are out there is insane. But it's like a 6-second play, and then you stop, and then you go again. Like, this is nonstop. The wrestling, 7 minutes of regulation, but it ain't 7 minutes. You know what I'm saying? And as soon as there's any lack of action whatsoever, they stop and they put you back together. I mean, it's unbelievable.
And then you have to do it sometimes 6 times in a day.
Unbelievable, man. It's funny you say swimming. The one I was thinking in my head, I was like, I wonder where he's going to go. I've always heard water polo is like an insanely hard, but that is swimming, right? But I've always heard that that's a really hard one because it's kind of nonstop as well. But yeah, man, it's been so much fun watching college wrestling. But that one, I had to say something because it bugged me. It was me and Justin James, who's a 5-time USC veteran and a good friend of mine. He coached my kid at one point. We were calling it, and both of us probably let the official have it more than we should have necessarily on the prior, but neither one of us liked it. And so since I have a microphone in front of me right here and I get a chance to talk about whatever I want on Cageside with John Morgan,
I got the mic, I make the rules.
That's it, baby. That's it.
Hey, we don't got time to break down any of these fights, but we're looking ahead this weekend. We got Adesanya and Imavov. I think it's going to be a great fight. My 2 cents really quick is Imavov isn't known as the greatest takedown guy, even though like you may see the last name and just think, oh, Eastern European, he should be able to take him down or whatever. I think the only way he wins this fight, which I think is very winnable for him, is he's got to apply the Sean Strickland approach. He needs to crowd him and he needs to overwhelm him with volume. We know Adesanya needs that space to do that beautiful masterpiece and paint that picture like he does. What say you, John?
I think I agree with you. I feel like this is one of those fights where we're going to know where Israel Adesanya's head and where he is at in his career. You know what I mean? This is a fight that Israel Adesanya should be able to win if he is dialed in, focused, and operating at the highest level that he's capable of. But I think, his execution, his motivation, all those things have kind of led to like, where is he at this point? I think he's kind of talked about nearing the end of it. And if he's not there 100%, this is going to be a tough fight for him. So I like that. And, man, just from a pure entertainment perspective, can we talk about Shara Magomedov and MVP as a co-main event?
This could actually be a pay-per-view. It really can. Oh. Sergey Pavlovich, Josino Rosenstrike, Shara Magomedov, Michael Page. Then we got the headliner of Izzy and Imavov. Holy crap, this is an amazing main card.
It really is, and worth noting, just to put it on your radar, make sure if you're wanting to watch this is not a Saturday evening card, right? They're over in Saudi Arabia, so because of that, it's early morning. The prelims, I think, are starting at 6 a.m. my time in Vegas, 8 a.m. In Memphis Central Time, so an early morning card, which, to be honest with you, I love early morning cards, man. Like, you can wake up and I don't have to mess around all day. I got an excuse where I can't go and do nothing with the family, you know what I mean? Like, oh, you guys got to go somewhere? Sorry, I got to watch fights. I love morning cards. So just worth pointing out, it is on ESPN Plus, so you can watch it when you want to watch it. But if you want to watch it live, you got to wake up a little bit early on Saturday.
Yeah, let's go, man. Let's go. Main card, 11 a.m. Central Time, February 1st from I can't even
Riyadh, Saudi.
Riyadh. I'm reading it. Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Let's go. With that being said, fun episode. We had to do a week of catch up as well. But for John Morgan and the guy who's going to go back and watch the wrestling match and see if the point was needed, Eric McMahon.
Let me know.
Enjoy the fights.